When the HOA tried to fence my life behind aesthetics, I learned how loudly the law can climb the stairs I cannot. He let her arrive the day the wind rattled my portable ramp like a tin throat trying to sing. A cream envelope, embossed with the HOA's seashell logo, lay atop my welcome mat as if it were a gift. My wheels nudged it as I rolled back inside, the edge of the aluminum ramp clicking beneath me. I used to step over this threshold without thinking. Now I calculate angles the way mountaineers judge cliffs. I opened it at the kitchen table, where the afternoon light cut my hands in gold. The paper smelled like starch and rules. "Dear homeowner," it began, which felt like a joke. Home lately had felt like a place I was only renting from luck. They denied my request for a permanent wheelchair ramp, inconsistent with neighborhood aesthetics, they said. All modifications require uniformity. I read the words again, as if repetition might reveal a loophole, a kinder sentence, an apology signed in blue ink. The next paragraph threatened fines if I kept the temporary ramp on my porch. A photo was stapled to the notice, taken from the sidewalk I can no longer reach without help. The ramp's aluminum ribs made to look monstrous, like a dragon curled at my door. Someone had leaned in close enough to capture the smudge where my palm always lands. It's been 8 months since the crash on County Road 12, since my legs learned the language of static. I moved home to a townhome with 2 pretty steps that had always been invisible to me, like breath. Now they stand between me and the groceries, the mail, the open evening. My mother cries sometimes when she thinks I'm not looking, the sound a small river behind a closed door. The portable ramp was our compromise, unstable, groaning, but better than begging my neighbor Ben to lift it in place every morning. I called the number listed at the bottom. A woman answered, voice smooth as laminate. "If you submit a new design in wood painted to match, the committee may reconsider," she said, as if I were asking for a gazebo. "That'll take months," I whispered. "I have occupational therapy on Tuesdays. I have a job. I have a life." After we hung up, the house felt crowded with words I didn't say. The wind picked up, and outside, the ramp trembled. I rolled to the window and watched a man from down the block slow his walk to stare. I waved. He looked away, embarrassed, like privacy was a curtain I'd yanked back. Later, sleepless, I searched. I typed, "wheelchair ramp HOA denied," into a browser that still remembered shoe sizes and hiking trails. A phrase rose like a life ring through the dark. Fair Housing Act. Another, reasonable accommodation. I read until the clock became a red eye. By morning, a new envelope lay on my mat. Urgent, hand-delivered, stamped violation in orange. And beneath the door, I could see the shadow of feet that didn't move. A knock followed. 3 raps, a pause, then 3 more, as if someone were spelling out a code I should know. I locked my brakes, squared my shoulders, and rolled toward the door. Their clipboard treated my life like a deviation. My answer arrived in a language written into federal law. I opened the door to a man in a cobalt windbreaker, the HOA seashell stitched over his heart like a medal. He planted his shoes on my welcome mat as if he owned the word. Clipboard, orange sticker, practiced sigh. "Evan Pierce," he said, tapping the clipboard. "Compliance. You have 48 hours to remove the ramp." My stomach pitched like the ramp in wind. "It keeps me safe," I said. "It keeps me able to leave this house without begging someone to lift me." "All structures must go through architectural review," he recited. "Uniformity matters. We have standards." I took a breath and tested a sentence I had learned in the dark. "The Fair Housing Act requires reasonable accommodation," I said steady. "My disability is obvious. This ramp is necessary." Something flickered across his face, annoyance or ignorance. "Submit a new design, wood, painted to match. Until then, fines will accrue," he said, and peeled a notice from the stack like a bandage. He taped it to my railing with practiced indifference, while two neighbors slowed their dogs and pretended not to watch. The wind fluttered the corner like a nervous eyelid. After he left, I sat there in the doorway, wheels locked, breath small. The paper glowed with threat. My phone was warm in my hand before I realized I had called my mother. She wanted to come over. I told her no, then yes, then no again, because what I needed was not tea, but a plan. Ben knocked next, hair damp from his morning run. He had seen the scene from across the street. "Want me to tell them where to stick their standards?" he asked, blunt as ever. "Stay," I said. "I need a witness for my sanity." I rolled to my laptop and typed a request, the words careful as steps. "I am requesting a reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act." I wrote that my spinal cord injury was permanent, that the ramp was necessary for safe access, that delay would endanger me. I asked for an immediate allowance for the temporary ramp and a timeline for a permanent one. I attached a letter from my occupational therapist and the photo that made the ramp look like a dragon. If they wanted proof, they could have the smudge, where my palm always lands. Before I hit send, I searched for help. Tri-County Fair Housing picked up on the third ring. "Lila speaking," a voice said, calm water over stone. I told her everything, the letter, the deadline, the man on my mat. She listened like a doc takes weight. "Email me your request," she said. "Ask for the interactive process. Do not move the ramp." Her voice changed, steel under velvet. "And note that retaliation is unlawful. They cannot harass you for asserting your rights." I sent the email, then printed it, then walked it out in my hands that cannot walk, because ritual steadied me. At the mailbox, Mrs. Alvarez paused her stroller and squeezed my arm. "For what it is worth," she said, "we are with you." By dusk, an email announced an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. I braced. They stacked bylaws like a barricade. I rolled in with a statute sharper than aesthetics. The clubhouse smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. Folding chairs had been arranged in two suspicious rows, as if intimacy were a temptation to be managed. A pitcher of water sat next to a stack of bylaws like an offering to paper. Marjorie, the board president, wore pearls that clicked when she moved her jaw. Evan leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, clipboard a shield. Ben took the seat beside me. Before the meeting, whispers pricked. Why can't she just use the garage? Sell and move. It's 2 steps, not Everest. Mrs. Alvarez rocked her stroller and shot darts with her eyes. She caught my glance and mouthed, "You've got this. Marjorie called us to order." "We are here regarding the ramp at Unit 12, she said, voice equal parts neighbor and judge. "We care about access. We also care about aesthetics." The room made a humming sound, agreement, fear, electricity. I introduced myself and read from the page I had written and rewritten. Under the Fair Housing Act, it is unlawful to refuse reasonable accommodations of policies when necessary for a person with a disability to use and enjoy their home. I need this ramp now, not in 60 days. A permanent wood ramp can be designed. But denying safe temporary access while you deliberate endangers me. On speaker, Lila's voice carried. HUD and DOJ guidance directs associations to engage promptly in the interactive process, she said. Delays and conditions that effectively deny access are violations. Fining someone for keeping a necessary device in place is retaliation. Hal, the treasurer, lifted a hand. "We have standards. Property values are delicate," he said. "We voted down a basketball hoop last fall." I swallowed. "My chair isn't a game," I replied. "Your aesthetics cannot outrank my ability to leave my home." Ben leaned forward. "Approve a permanent design tonight," he said. "I'll build what you want by Saturday." Marjorie stiffened. "Approvals require drawings, permits, committee review. We cannot rush." "That is precisely what reasonable accommodation requires," Lila said, velvet over steel. "Timely, effective action. Your own rules must bend when they block access. Evan shook his head. She could remove it at night, he offered. We'll allow use between 8 and 6. Less obtrusive. Emergencies do not clock out, I said, hearing the edge in my voice. My bladder doesn't. My life won't wait for your hours. The board went into executive session. The door closed with the soft finality of a lid. I stared at my hands and thought of the morning I learned to transfer without help, how victory had tasted like copper. When they returned, Marjorie read from a sheet. The board denies the temporary ramp as currently installed. Fines resume Friday. A wood design painted to match will be considered if submitted. My chest tightened. Mrs. Alvarez made a sound like a small storm. Ben swore under his breath. Lila's voice was glass. Under 42 U.S.C. 3617, interference and coercion are illegal. Expect a HUD complaint by morning, she said. Do not touch that ramp. Evan peeled an orange sticker and set it on the table like a dare. I met his eyes and didn't blink. By dawn, the law had learned my name, and it started dialing theirs. My inbox blinked like a lighthouse. One email from HUD, subject, intake completed, your case number is assigned. Another from Lila, CC'd to an attorney named J. Park, whose signature block carried the gravity of scales. Complaint filed, Lila wrote. Conciliation requested. Preserve status quo. Jay is moving on an emergency injunction. I read the words aloud, letting them set in the room like furniture. Preserve status quo. Keep the ramp. I rolled to the door, touched the cool aluminum, felt the familiar smudge dip under my thumb like a groove on a record. Outside, the morning showed its ordinary face. Trash trucks, dog leashes, a sky undecided between blue and threat, a thud at the door, another envelope. Notice of continuing violations, stamped in orange, fines at $50 a day, until unauthorized structure, removed. And then the last paragraph, the coldest. Per Section 7.3, nuisance structures, removal of the ramp is scheduled for Friday, 8:30 a.m. My heart did something animal. I checked the date. Tomorrow. Ben showed up with coffee he hadn't sweetened because he knows I hate being softened for. He read the letter and his jaw squared. They're sending a crew, he said. They can't do that. Apparently they can, I said, and the words tasted like iron. I called Lila with shaking hands. She answered on the first ring. No, self-help removal, she said. You are entitled to keep necessary accommodations while we resolve this. Jay's filing for a temporary restraining order. We'll need your affidavit, facts, dates, photos. We'll get a hearing in the morning. Do not let anyone take that ramp. If they try, call the police and keep your phone recording. That afternoon became a choreography of proof. I photographed the steps from every angle, measured the rise and run, documented bruises where transfers had gone bad. I wrote about County Road 12 and the way the guardrail had opened like a zipper. I wrote about how 10 pounds of groceries turn into a fall when you are balancing wheels on wood. I wrote about independence like it was a person I was fighting to see. A white SUV idled across the street. Evan and a man in a safety vest approached with clipboards and a tape measure. Contractor walkthrough, Evan announced. We'll be quick. Ben stepped between them and the ramp. Not without her permission, he said. The contractor's eyes slid from my chair to the aluminum and back again, calculating. Evan smirked. 8 a.m., Ms. Ruiz. We don't want it to come to that. By evening, the sky finally chose threat. Wind feathered the flagpoles, and my ramp thrummed like a live wire. My mother called and left a voicemail prayer in Spanish that had not touched our house since my grandmother's funeral. I sat by the doctor with a wrench and tightened every bolt until my palms shone. At 7:59 the next morning, a truck reversed to the curb in front of my unit, beeping its indifferent song. 2 men climbed out, gloves on, eyes down. Ben stood on my porch, arms crossed. Mrs. Alvarez lifted her phone, recording. I positioned my chair in the doorway and set my brakes. The lead man raised a crowbar, polite about it, like he was about to open a crate of oranges. My ramp is a necessary medical device, I said, my voice bigger than my chest. Removing it without a court order is interference and harassment under the Fair Housing Act. The men hesitated. Somewhere down on Carlson, a siren spilled into the morning and curled like a question above us. My phone buzzed in my lap. Jay's name lit the screen. They stepped onto the first step. The crowbar bit metal. I didn't look down. The law rode in on a ringtone, and it wore a judge's signature like armor. The crowbar kissed aluminum, and the sound rang like a struck bell in my bones. I tapped Jay's name and hit speaker. "Stop them," he said, breathless and precise. "We have a temporary restraining order. Check your email. Show it to the officers. I've notified dispatch." The siren swelled and then parked at my curb, red and blue washing the porch purple. The contractor froze mid-lift. Evan did not. "Proceed," he told them, chin high, eyes on me. Ben lifted my phone so the PDF filled the screen. A judge's, cursive. The words enjoined and status quo bright as flares. Officer Patel stepped onto the lawn, palm up. "Nobody touches anything," she said. She read the order, then turned to Evan. "You're aware this prohibits removal pending hearing?" Evan's mouth made a straight line. "We're enforcing community standards." "You're about to enforce contempt," she replied. "Back off." The contractors retreated like a tide. The crowbar looked embarrassed on grass. I realized I was shaking only when my mother's hand found my shoulder, warm and shaking too. She must have raced over during the siren, lipstick imperfect, sweater buttoned wrong. "Gracias a Dios," she whispered, forehead to my temple. "Status quo." "Preserved," Jay texted, then called. "Hearing is Monday morning," he said. "We'll argue reasonable accommodation and retaliation. Document everything. Rest if you can." His steadiness threaded through chest like an anchor rope. Rest felt theoretical. Neighbors gathered in eddies. Mrs. Alvarez narrated to her phone for an audience I could not see. A boy on a scooter asked if my wheels went fast. I wanted to tell him yes, sometimes, when the road is kind. By evening, the story jumped from phones to television. A van with a satellite dish hiccuped down Carlson and coughed to a stop. A reporter explained disability rights against a backdrop of my porch. The HOA released a statement about uniformity and property values, sincere as a laminate smile. My inbox filled with strangers' stories, stairs like walls, gates like insults, boards like small empires. On Sunday, Jay arrived with a binder thick enough to doorstop a gale. He sat at my table, tie loosened, and mapped the case. Statute, HUD guidance, letters from Dr. Nguyen and my occupational therapist, affidavits from Ben and Mrs. Alvarez, screenshots of fines and orange stickers and Evan's crowbar crew. "They'll offer a compromise," he said. "Maybe approve a ramp if you sign a confidentiality clause, waive claims, swallow fees." "What do you want?" he asked finally. "To get in and out of my house," I said. "And for the next person not to. Have to teach the law to their front steps." He nodded. "Then we'll push for policy change and settlement. Clear procedures, deadlines, training." Monday dawned with courthouse marble under fluorescent light, a chill that smelled like dust and importance. Marjorie and Hal stood with a lawyer in a gray suit. Evan stared at a spot over my head, jaw working. Lila squeezed my shoulder. The judge entered, black robe whispering. "Counsel, are you ready?" she asked. I rolled forward, breath steady, palms dry. "Ready, Your Honor, we..." Weren't the only ones listening in that bright room. The gavel didn't crash. It turned the lock I'd been rattling and swung the door toward me. The judge leaned forward. "Counsel," she said, "what happens to Ms. Ruiz if the ramp goes?" "Irreparable harm," Jay replied. She cannot safely exit her home. The HOA's only claim is aesthetics. The HOA lawyer adjusted his tie. Uniformity protects property values, he said. We invited a permanent design. On what timeline? The judge asked. 60 to 90 days. I pictured 60 days of canceled therapy, empty fridges, and bruises shaped like patients. Jay lifted a page. The Fair Housing Act requires prompt, effective accommodation, 42 U.S.C. 3604 F3B, he said. The board fined, posted stickers, and attempted removal after Ms. Ruiz asserted her rights, implicating 36-117. The judge turned to me. Anything to add? Only this, I said. I want what every neighbor has, a door that lets me live. She nodded. The temporary order becomes a preliminary injunction, she ruled. No removal, no fines. The HOA will approve a code-compliant permanent ramp within 14 days, absent safety concerns. Council will propose policy changes and training. Marjorie's pearls went still. Evan stared at the floor. Cameras waited outside. The law is clear, Jay said, steering the microphones away. Lila's hug made my wheels squeak. Conciliation felt surgical. We cut out gag clauses and waivers. We stitched in deadlines, an appeal path, and a real email that answers. Mandatory HUD-led training. Posted notices, rescinded fines, fees repaid. A letter I could read without heat rising in my face. When I signed, my hand shook, not with fear, but with relief. Ben and I watched the permanent ramp take shape. A clean run of wood, sealed for weather, painted to echo the oak's late-day shadow. The slope was kind, the rails warm. My mother blessed it with rosemary, laughter, and a kiss on my hair. On the first morning without orange stickers, I rolled down and the world tilted toward me. A stroller rattled by. The scooter kid asked if my wheels were fast. Fast enough, I said, and we raced to the mailbox. Weeks later, a veteran 2 streets over knocked. Heard you fought the board, he said. They approved my rail in 2 days. His eyes held permission, not thanks. Good, I said. Open your door. That night, the wind rose. The ramp did not tremble. The law remembered my name. The neighborhood remembered its word, neighbor. And my steps remembered their purpose, a way out and a way home. At the next board meeting, chairs filled early. Hal read the new procedures in a halting voice. 10-day decisions, emergency approvals, an interactive process. Marjorie apologized, without pearls. Evan cleared his throat, then faced me. I'm sorry, he said, not to the room, but to my eyes. It wasn't absolution. It was a beginning. Afterward, Mrs. Alvarez wheeled her stroller beside my chair. We kept a list, she whispered. Folks who can bring groceries, hold doors, show up. Keep it anyway, not because the law failed, but because community matters too. At home, I ran my palm over the rail, found the same place my hand always lands, and left a clean crescent of oil, a human signature. When the light swings just right, the ramp looks like it grew.